Our next speaker earned his degree in medicine and law at the University of Santo Tomas. He then trained in forensics at the PNP Crime Laboratory Service at Camp Crame. He also earned a degree in criminology at the Philippine College of Criminology. He's an assistant professor and lecturer at numerous colleges of medicine and law in Metro Manila. He is also a medical-legal consultant of numerous government and private hospitals in Metro Manila. He is the current chairman of St. Luke's Medical Center College of Medicine Department of Legal Medicine. He has delivered over 1,000 lectures as speaker, lecturer, panelist before the health and legal community since 1993 on topics covering medical malpractice, health laws, ethics, and forensic medicine. He holds clinic at the St. Luke's Medical Center and practices law through his law firm CASTRO, Rebosa and Associates. But wait, there's more. You can also catch him as lead vocalist for RETROMANIACS, performing regularly at RJ Bistro, Dusit Thani Hotel, Makati during Saturdays 9 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. Let us now welcome our next speaker, Attorney Antonio Alejandro D. Rebosa, MD.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for inviting me over to give you this lecture on the medico-legal issues in urology practice. Well, it's a nightmare for any doctor to have a threat, no? When patients threaten you with a lawsuit or actually file a case against you. In the United States, urologists rank 12 out of 28 specialties when it comes to malpractice cases. And it is estimated that urologists would at least have 2 cases within the span of their career. We do not have the exact statistics here in the Philippines, but again, of course, is practice of surgery. And in the last few years, OB had already overtaken surgery as the #1 specialty with the most number of malpractice cases. So #1 is now OB, followed by surgery. And of course, when we talk about surgery, it encompasses all the specialties or subspecialties in surgery, uro among them. And over the years, we've had clients or doctors who have been actually sued, no? For not only for the practice of urology, but of course at the PRC, when they file cases against you, it is for unprofessional and unethical conduct. So the usual medico-legal issues in urology practice is quite the same for all specialties. So as they say, ignorance of the law is not an excuse from compliance therewith, but I'm sure you all know the law, but it's very difficult, even when you are very meticulous in your practice, you'll never know when lightning is going to strike you. Now, this is very true. Establishing one's medical practice after all that schooling and training takes a lot of sacrifice and guts. Right? You went through med school for about 9 years, internship of a year, medical board exams, then you go through residency training and fellowship, subspecialties. Okay? And one's reputation is built through many, many years of hard work and perseverance. But it only takes one perceived catastrophic mistake to destroy and put to waste all of those laurels and achievements. So protecting one's practice is never easy, as there are many unpredictable perils like difficult or impossible patients or parents. And you also have state regulations like Republic Act 7610, the anti-child abuse law. Also, you have Presidential Decree 169, which is mandatory reporting of all cases involving less serious and serious physical injuries. As urologists, you will also have patients with who would fall under these particular laws. If your patient is below 18 years of age, practically legally he is a child. no? And you also have trauma patients. And if he's a trauma patient and you are the main attending physician, no, this is if the injuries would fall under the classification of less serious and serious physical injuries, then you will have to report that. And this particular law is specific for doctors. Okay? It is your head, no? It is your license that is at stake. But what we usually do when we have trauma patients is that we usually delegate it to security people. No? So if security fails to report it, the police will not go after security. They will go after you because the law says that it is the doctor that should report this particular incidents. So you have to monitor, no, security or whoever is in charge, whoever is the hospital assigns, no, to report these cases, because it is not them, no, it's not their head that is at stake. It is the head of the doctor responsible for reporting. So unwanted and unforeseen complications could usually end up in a media backlash or litigation, especially for the last 20 years. No, times have really changed. It used to be that patients would threaten you with a lawsuit. No, right away they would threaten you with a lawsuit. But this, and then later on, they would threaten you with that they will go to the media, okay? And radio, TV, newspapers. But now, the last 5-10 years, they threaten you that they will go to the social media and destroy you. So usually these problems starts with an unfortunate, unwanted, unavoidable clinical mishap or event. Of course, no doctor would ever want harm or death to happen to a patient. But accidents do happen, unforeseen, unwanted complications and risk. No? And when that happens, the patient or their next of kin, no, they allege negligence on your part, incompetence, ignorance, arrogance, impropriety, sexual misconduct, okay? Unethical and unprofessional behavior, blah, blah, blah. So they're going to throw everything at you, including the sink. Now, let's review again the 3 kinds of liabilities. As doctors, of course, no, we have 3 kinds of liabilities: criminal, civil, and administrative. So for criminal cases, the usual complaint against you is that you are reckless, no, you are negligent, and your recklessness is inexcusable, not justifiable. And again, we did not intend to do that. But since negligence is also punishable, no, and if the patient dies supposedly because of the negligence of the doctor, Article 365 of the Revised Penal Code will come into force, and that would be reckless imprudence resulting in homicide, which carries with an imprisonment of a maximum term of 4 years and 2 months. Now, general rule. Usually, the only one that is criminally and administratively liable is the doer of the act. Kung sino ang tatanga-tanga, sino ang nakagawa ng krimen, siya lang ang makukulong, siya lang ang matatanggalan ng lisensya. But somebody else may be made to pay, no, in the form of damages, and that would now be the so-called civil liability. So you have damages, no? Moral damages for besmirched reputation, social humiliation, sleepless nights, serious anxiety, mental anguish, fright, no, and the like. Then you have actual and compensatory damages, no? Damages that can be proven with certainty, one with a receipt, okay? Then exemplary damages or corrective damages as an example to the public, no, as a deterrent para hindi pa marisan ng publiko ang ginawang kabalbalan ng doktor. The court will award more damages. Okay? Now, usually, when there's a problem, no, it usually starts with a complaint from the patient addressed to the hospital, but in many cases also, no complaint is filed with the hospital. What you will usually receive before a case is filed against you would be a demand letter, no, coming from the lawyer, or in some instances, just a demand letter coming from the family. It used to be that the record, at least for our law office, when it comes to demands, no, the highest demand that we've had about 10 years ago was 100 million pesos for a patient who supposedly died because of the negligence of the doctor. But about 5 or 6 years ago, there we had this case of I think a 10-year-old boy who underwent circumcision, no, in a medical center performed by a urologist with an anest social. No, circumcision lang, no, pero ano siya. And they did the circumcision in just about 20-30 minutes. Patient was up and about, and patient was sent home right away. But lo and behold, no, after about 2 months, or just a matter of maybe about 3 or 4 months, the urologist received a demand letter from the lawyers of the patient. No? Apparently, the boy who underwent circumcision had inflammation, the usual kamatis, infection, and ended up with skin grafting in another hospital. And the lawyers were claiming that because of what happened, this boy probably would now grow up to be impotent, will not be able to enjoy sex, will not be able to procreate. Pero my God naman, ano lang naman yun eh, skin grafting, hindi naman nadamay yung kanyang nerves or, you know. And they were demanding the astronomical, outrageous sum of 250 million pesos, which the urologist should pay within 10 days from receipt. My God, ano kala nila sa atin, no? Mga doktor, nagtatain ng pera. No? Kahit nga siguro yung stool exam, walang 250 million na bacteria eh. No, but that's true, from about 5 or 6 years ago. No? Right now, we're handling 2 cases also involving circumcision. Okay? Unfortunately, the boy who 10 or 11-year-old boy, no, had circumcision at about 8 in the morning, went home at about 9. Nothing untoward happened, except that within the same day, at about 8 o'clock in the evening, the boy was rushed to the emergency room where he eventually was pronounced dead. And the doctor who performed the autopsy stated that the cause of death was propofol. My goodness, no? And propofol naman eh, di ba, ano lang yun, 15-20 minutes, wala na sa body mo, no? So something might have happened because the boy was up and about when he was sent home an hour after the procedure, no? And in this particular incident, the anesthesiologist, no, was, well, together with the surgeon who performed the circumcision, was criminally charged, no? And well, ultimately they were acquitted, but at what cost was it? They had to go to court, they had to pay for lawyers, warrant of arrest was issued. No, and in fact, even the anesthesiologist, he spent 1 night in jail, no, before we could post bail for him. In another case, I think also an 11-year-old boy, no, underwent circumcision in the operating room, no, and unfortunately, while at the after the circumcision, no, patient went into cardiac arrest and died about 2 or 3 days later. The case is still ongoing. No? It was the surgeon who was sued. No, so you see, circumcision is very, very minor. No, it's really nothing. But you'll never know when accidents would really happen. No, and I guess please do not use the term minor, kasi ang tingin nila pag minor, there's no morbidity, there's no mortality. Okay? So refrain from using the term minor or sandali lang yan, no? I mean, you still have to explain that there are innate risk, no? Or things could happen beyond your control. Although it's general knowledge, no? Circumcision lang. Again, huwag nating lalang-langin. Okay? Sa mga appendectomies nga, do not use the word simple, minor. There's nothing really simple, especially when you go to make use of anesthesia. Now, for administrative cases, this is for violation not of the law, but for violation of the code of ethics, no, and or violation of guidelines and policies of your specialty societies or some other administrative bodies. No? And when we talk of administrative bodies, this is when a complaint is filed against you before the Professional Regulations Commission, of which it is the Board of Medicine that will hear the case. No? And before the PRC, what is at stake is your license to practice medicine. Or the case is filed before the Philippine Medical Association, and it's the Commission on Ethics, no, that will hear out the case. But of course, the only powers that the PMA has is your membership with the PMA. And as of now, membership even with the PMA is not mandatory. But there are certain privileges that only PMA members in good standing can avail of, the most important of which is accreditation with PhilHealth. Or they might file the case, no, within your own society, Philippine Uro Association. And what do they want? No, they want you, perhaps if you're a fellow, no, they want you expelled from the society, no, or they could file it before other again the specialty societies like POGS, PSPS, no, PCS, and the like. And again, the issue here is not really violation of the law, but for unethical, unprofessional conduct, immorality, or evident bad faith in dealing with the patients. So at the PRC, no, there when we talk about ethics, it only means two things. One, standard of care, and medical etiquette. When we say standard of care, as doctors, and even for you guys, no, you're specialists, okay? You're supposed to keep abreast with medical developments. You're not supposed to be stagnant. No, if you deviate from the standard of care, okay, that your specialty requires, then and if something happens to the patient, then you could be held liable. But it's not only medical practice, no, that entails or part of our ethics. As I've said, it's also medical etiquette. As doctors, we belong to a very noble profession. That's why we're supposed to be noble. You're supposed to be upright and sober at all times. So, lasenggo ka, adik ka, babaero ka, you're not a good example. No? So, you can be charged before the PRC. We've had cases, no, actually more than 30 to 40% of the cases that we have has nothing to do, no, with the practice of medicine. It's more for impropriety, sexual misconduct, no, that's why sexual harassment, no, you have to be careful with what you say, no, towards your fellow doctors and to the patients, because it might be misconstrued as being sexual in nature. No, we have had cases in which doctors were sued before the PRC for bouncing checks. So, lahat pwede. And the PRC does not dismiss cases. No? If somebody files a case against you for possession of an ugly face, the PRC is not going to dismiss that. You will actually still receive summons, no, for you to answer and defend yourself that even if you have an ugly face, no, you're still entitled to practice medicine, and I'm not kidding. You are given 15 days within which to submit your counter affidavit. So they don't dismiss cases. Okay? But of course, if in criminal cases, no, you lose the case, you get convicted, you go to prison, you're ordered to pay a fine. No, in civil cases, you're ordered to pay damages. You have to indemnify in the form of money. But administrative cases before the PRC, and if you're found guilty of unprofessional and unethical conduct, the PRC does not have the power to send you to jail. It does not have the power to order you to pay damages to the patient, because the only powers that it has is to reprimand. No, reprimand is a very stern warning, still a sanction, okay? And or suspension and or revocation of your license to practice. If your license is revoked, you can still renew your license, no, every 3 years, as long as you were able to file a timely motion for reconsideration and appeal all the way up to the Supreme Court. No? In PRC cases, there is no whole departure order, there is no warrant of arrest, and you don't even have to be present during the proceedings, except, no, when it's already your turn to testify. Same thing with civil cases. No, your presence is not required as long as you have a special power of attorney. Unlike in criminal cases, it depends upon the judge whether to grant your waiver of non-appearance. So hassle talaga, no, if it's a criminal case, because you are required to be present always. Okay? When I say expulsion here, no, the penalty of expulsion would be from the PMA and all the other specialty societies. Or if they file a case against you before the hospital, what do they want? No, they want the hospital to either suspend you and or to terminate your services. Now, common issues, no? In about 90% of cases being filed against doctors, the complainants are always saying, or they're alleging that the doctor did not conform to the standard of care that is required of his profession or his specialty. No? And usually the question that is asked there, or the standard is, did the doctor exercise the diligence of a good father of a family in the treatment of his patients? So what is diligence of a good father of a family? Okay? That is for something for the court to decide. Oh, what is that standard? And who is going to say whether you had the diligence of a good father of a family? No? If the issue is uro practice, the patient is claiming that the urologist did not conform, or the uro deviated from the standard of care, then he will need to present an expert witness. An expert witness, no, is any registered physician. Okay? So even a general practitioner can be presented as an expert, okay, and in fact also testify. Now, the medico-legal officers of the PNP and the NBI, only very few of them are specialists in a field. No, most of them were general practitioners, and they're not even clinically or seeing patients for purposes of treatment. No, and yet they are being utilized or being presented as experts. No, when it comes to their autopsy findings, no? Because usually when the relatives suspect that there was medical negligence, autopsy is done and performed by them, and they testify. They would be testifying with their findings, and even if they're not specialists, they are not pathologists. No, they are being presented as such, because any registered physician can be presented as an expert witness. So usually when there are doctors that are willing to be to testify against you, then it becomes a battle of credentials, credibility, and professional standing. So if you're a urologist and there are urologists willing to testify for you, or if the society would come out with a resolution after reviewing, no, all the records, and there would be a favorable resolution on your part, then you should be in good stead. Because who among the fellows, no, or the members of the society would go against the very resolution made by the society? So again, this would be a battle of expert witnesses, and when there are expert witnesses, then again, as I've said, no, it will be a battle of credentials and professional standing. Only very few doctors are perhaps in the Philippines now willing to openly testify. Maraming meron sa atin, no, but only very few are willing to really go to court and testify and or sign documents or affidavits, no, and the like. But lately, no, we have had cases in which, because the patient, no, has a difficulty in securing these services or the testimony of Filipino doctors, they've been getting doctors from abroad. We've had the case from about, still ongoing, no? There were 2 Phil-American doctors who came to the Philippines and testified against our clients. And they were former Filipinos, no, who took up medicine here and have been practicing in the States for about 30, 40 years. And their trip to the Philippines, of course, was sponsored, no, and paid for by the patient. We have had also some doctors from Singapore and Australia coming over here, no? So if the patient can afford such witnesses from abroad, they can be presented also as expert witnesses. Yun, may problema na tayo doon, no? Pag yung talagang there are doctors na palaban, no, and really willing to tell the court that, yes, Your Honor, that doctor is negligent. Mahirap na. Well, other problems that we might encounter really would be the under the electronic evidence law and cyber crimes. No, as I've said, things have changed over the last 20 years with the advent of internet technology. No, ibang-iba na yung practice natin: social media, text messages, emails, and of course, doctor shaming. No, and almost every day I get text messages from my former students, doctors that I don't know from the Visayas and Mindanao, no, dito sa Luzon, lahat 'yan, no. Hindi tayo ligtas kasi global na tayo, the reach of social media, no. One single mistake that they think you have committed, they will post it, no, in just a matter of a few hours, meron ng 1,000 views with about 30 comments, no, and after one day 300 comments na, and wala man lang pabor sa'yo sa doctor. And if this happens, no, do not engage them. Just take screenshots of the postings, no, and let's see if we do have a case. But usually when I get calls from the doctors, no, kasi mga Filipino doctors talagang very impulsive yan. Doc, there is this Facebook post, no, that has been going since about 3 days ago. No, they posted my picture, blah blah blah, and they've been over 3,000 views with about 300 comments. Ang sasama talaga ng comments. Gusto kong magdemanda. And I always tell the doctor, Doc, get some screenshots, no, everything, no, lahat, and then call me back after 2 weeks or after 1 month. Then, Doc, gusto ko na magdemanda ngayon. And I would tell them, no, 2 weeks or 1 month. Why? Because the normal lifespan of all these negative posts is no more than 1 week. Ganun naman mga Pinoy. No? Gusto lang manira. After that, iba na naman yung flavor of the week. No? So, after 1 week, if I get your case now, and bayad ka na sa abogado, and then after 2 weeks, no, malamig na ulo mo kasi wala na. Doc, pwede bang, attorney, pwede bang pakibalik na lang yung binayad ko sa'yo? Of course, but once you've already paid the lawyer, that lawyer is not going to reimburse you anymore. No? So, mga doktor talagang impulsive. So, I just tell them, wait for 2 weeks. And none of those who called me, no, had ever tried to call back again after 2 weeks. So, siguro wala na. No, lumamig na rin ang ulo because as I've said, no, the normal lifespan of all these negative comments being posted is just 1 week. Pabayaan na lang siguro, no? Unless talagang below the belt. Okay? But you can file a case against the one who posted those negative comments against you. And if it's really libelous, then it's cyber libel. Please take note that you cannot file a case of cyberbullying. Cyberbullying, the law on cyberbullying is only for high school students. Those who are 18 and below, no, matatanda na tayo, so hindi cyberbullying ang kaso, hindi cyber libel. Okay? So again, text messages, emails, they're also admissible in evidence, and we have to be very, very careful about that, no, especially with the data privacy law of 2012. Be careful with what you text, what you email in our Viber groups. Ako, ilan na yung napatrouble dyan sa mga Viber groups na yan, no. Inadvertently, I'm sure this has also happened to you before. Yes, for me, no, you send emails and text messages to unintended recipients. Okay? Yung Viber group, it's really not that private anymore, no? Public na yan kung marami yung members. I think if there are more than 50, it's no longer considered a private group. So if you inadvertently posted a medical certificate of a patient, no, without, of course, the authorization of such a patient, then baka may kamag-anak siya doon, no, especially pag mga contagious diseases yan, then you could get into trouble, okay, under the data privacy law. No, I have so many patients now, or sorry, I have so many cases, no, in which napaka-trivial. No, so you have to be careful. Yung mga, like in one case, there was this elderly patient brought to the emergency room by the spouse, by the wife. No, So the resident interviewed both the husband and the wife. After that, the resident did some diagnostic tests, no? And since the patient was in the stretcher, no, I think she was probably sleeping. The resident talked to the wife and disclosed the findings to the wife. Okay? And about 2 weeks later, no, HR received a complaint from the patient. And I was complaining about the resident for talking to the wife. Eh, yung wife na nagdala sa kanya. Who would ever have thought, no, na ayaw pala ng pasyente na makausap ang wife. So, again, very trivial, pero these are actual cases, the complaints. In another case, after a week, no, on the same hospital, a female patient was about to undergo surgery. And again, she wanted that the procedure be explained to her. And she was quite a difficult patient, and she was in the ward. No, sa ward probably apatan yata yung room. No? And the surgery was to be done in the afternoon, so the resident again went to see her, and for the third time explained to her the procedure. Unfortunately, when the doctor went to see her, the patient was in the comfort room, and so the doctor and the patient talked, no, about the procedure with the patient inside the comfort room and the doctor outside. And surgery was done, and about 2 weeks later, a complaint was filed against the doctor resident because supposedly because of their conversation, other patients overheard what they were discussing. But still, it wasn't really that shameful, or ang pinag-usapan lang nila is the procedure for appendectomy. But again, a complaint is a complaint. So you have to be careful, no? Ngayon kahit ano na lang, no, nagdidemanda or nagko-complain ang mga pasyente. Now, golden tips for urologists, which from the American College of Legal Medicine, of which I am a fellow and a diplomate. No? For urologists, it states there that always be familiar with recent developments and guidelines of your specialty society. If your specialty society will defend you, then have no fear. But the specialty society will only defend you if you had adhered to the policies and the guidelines. Usually what we do, well, for fellows and diplomates, no, with complaints coming from the patients, we ask the specialty society to have a peer review. No, we submit all the records and the complaint for the respective committee on ethics to review. And if the review is favorable, no, they issue a resolution, and that resolution is one of our documentary evidence that we will be presenting in court. Please take note that again, it's a battle of expert witnesses. The judge is a lawyer who may not know anything about medicine. So he has to be enlightened by a doctor. So as I've said, it's a battle of witnesses, and who would be more credible over the other? And that's where credentials and professional standing would come in. Always find time to substantially discuss the patient's case, including alternatives, the procedures that you don't or you cannot perform, no? Morbidity and mortality. Of course, medyo lahat naman, no, may morbidity. So that's something that should be discussed, and also the cost among others, no? So this is what we call informed consent, and everything should be documented. That's why our consent forms has evolved through the years. No? From a simple consent form ngayon, 2 to 3 pages, tapos nakasulat pa doon yung mga that you have personally discussed the following, no, or the possible risks and complications. If at all these complications would really set in, now what would it be the mode of treatments? Their number 3 tip is that screen all the male patients for prostate cancer. No, so and then PSA. So basta male patients above, how old was it for you? I think it's 40, no? Dapat meron ng digital rectal examination, and you have to ask for this prostate test. Okay? And always ask the patient on their sexual function prior to you doing anything. and document that. Because they could claim that even if you were able, no, to cure and treat their problem, but it resulted into some sexual dysfunction, then they can sue you. No? Especially sa mga lalaki, mas importante sa kanila yung pagkalalaki kaysa dun sa matreat yung kanilang problema. No? And how are we going to prove that it would be very difficult to go to court and talk about something that we have not documented before doing any surgical intervention? Number 5, of course, refrain from criticizing another urologist or a referring physician. As they say, behind the success or failure of a man is a woman. Behind every medical negligence case is another physician. No? Tactless, irresponsible statements made by other physicians. That is the number one cause why there's a spike in medical malpractice lawsuits, no? Being filed against doctors. Marami sa atin mga miron. Normal lang yung magmiron. Pero yung pagmimiron natin na yan, it can result into lawsuits. No? And wala namang may gusto sa atin mag-testify. So golden rule, don't do unto others what you don't want others to do unto you. Number 6, personally review all the films and other test results before surgical intervention. No? Of course, we're not saying that you are better than the radiologist or the ultrasonologist. But sometimes, meron din problema eh. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So do not just depend on the white paper, yung resulta. No? Just like me, I always depend lang kung ano yung written results. Hindi naman ako marunong magbasa ng x-ray. When I prepare my medico-legal report, I'm just going to write there the pertinent findings of the radiologist. But for you guys, you have training, in radiology. So before you do something, personally review all the films, especially nga sa mga orthopedic surgeons. Some radiologists would say there's no fracture, but for the ortho there is a fracture, and before you know it, nagka-problema na. Okay? So personally review all the films. Do not just depend on the written findings. And also, always ask for the medications of the patient, because the medications perhaps that you might be giving to the patient would be contraindicated or would have some adverse effects because of the medications being taken by the patient for some other illnesses. Okay. And number 8, warn your vasectomy patient that sterility cannot be assured until he has a negative semen analysis. And again, document. Because without documentation, hirap yun. So parang yung mga nagpa-ligate ng mga babae, nabuntis pa din. So it's the OB's responsibility to explain to the patient. Kayo naman, urologist, you have to explain and document. Dapat pirmado ng pasyente that it was explained to him that there's a certain time period before there would be a zero semen or zero sperm. Okay? So you need to practice defensive medicine. Defensive medicine means that not really asking for a lot of useless or unnecessary diagnostic tests, but more for documentation. You'll never know, as I've said, when you would be needing these documents. Before performing the surgery, you explain to the patient, maybe it would be best that you do some sketching and diagrams, and then later on, after you have explained to the patient, make the patient sign those sketches that you have made, so that if the patient later on would say that you never spent time explaining the procedure, this has happened already a few times to some of our clients. They were saying that the doctor they only talked to them for about 5 to 10 minutes, but the doctor presented several documents, mga drawings, duly signed by the patient. So it would not have taken 5 minutes. So documentation is very, very important. Now, Melvin Schiffman is a pediatrician who's both a doctor and a lawyer, and I completely believe what he said, that there's no complete solution to medical malpractice, since any patient may sue the doctor for actual or imagined injuries. There's almost always a lawyer who's willing to take on any malpractice suit and find an expert who will testify for the patient. Unfortunately now, babawiin ko yung sinabi ko kanina, meron na din tayo mga doctors, no, willing to testify against doctors, no? And they are also specialists. So it is the prepared doctor who has maintained his practice with forethought that will be protected against such intrusions. But of course, I'm not in favor of really practicing defensive medicine, meaning you'd be requesting for so many unnecessary tests just to protect yourself. No? That should not be true in the Philippine setting. Na headache lang, magre-request ka na for CT scan, X-rays, EEGs, no, and the like. But as I've said, you'll never know when lightning is going to strike you. So it is the prepared doctor, no, with foreseeability that can perhaps, no, avoid having these problems. And with this, I'd like to end my lecture. And I hope everybody of you, all of you, are safe. And you never have to call me. Maybe hopefully when this pandemic is over, when you come to Manila, I can again resume my other profession, which I love more than that of being a doctor and a lawyer. So thank you so much for listening. And anytime you run into problems, you can call me, or you can call up our law office or my younger brother Abed, and we'll try to help you out. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone.